most equitable cannabis industry. Those were not just words. We wanted to make sure that those who had been targeted by the failed drug wars of the past by racially biased enforcement had opportunities to benefit from legalization. It was an approach that no other state has attempted, and I still continue to believe that these goals are worthy and just. But it's fair to say that New York's emerging cannabis industry has had plenty of challenges before it. Some of them beyond our control, like litigation from out-of-state mega corporations trying to undermine our goals that set us back for at least 9 months. And actually, some are related to challenges within my administration. Now, I've been frank with New Yorkers that I'm not satisfied. I even used the word disaster to describe the status quo. So, today I'm here to announce an overhaul of the Office of Cannabis Management based on a review that was recently completed. I'm proud today to be joined by Commissioner Moy of the Office of General Services and First Deputy Superintendent Chris West, who will lead our cannabis task force within the New York State Police. Let me be clear. There are deep-seated issues at OCM, issues that have limited its ability to fulfill its licensing role, a complicated application process for prospective business owners. And unfortunately, this has overshadowed the excellent work done by hard-working OCM staff. And I do want to commend the rank and file public servants who have put in countless hours, evenings, weekends, all committed to standing up this groundbreaking equitable approach. Now, the report that we're releasing today to the press and the public will be used as a guide to make much needed reforms at the Office of Cannabis Management. My team has shared these findings with Executive Director Chris Alexander, who was a key player in drafting the original legislation and served as OCM's first ever Executive Director. We're grateful for the work he has done to stand up this new agency and this new market. He agrees there's time for a new direction at OCM and has graciously agreed to work with us for the remainder of his term to help implement those operational changes. And he told us he intends to pursue other opportunities at the conclusion of that term, which is in September. In a few moments, I will outline some of the operational changes we intend to implement going forward. But first, I want to explain who we're fighting for. In the new report, you'll see testimonies from individuals who've been directly harmed by the operational problems that we've identified. Like one applicant for a retail dispensary, a Latino service-disabled veteran who's been paying more than $5,000 a month since November and has invested over $40,000 overall. This individual states that they've not received any communication from OCM since they submitted their application 6 months ago. And since then, they've watched other cannabis stores open, indeed an illegal one, just 1,000 feet from their operation. This is not only discouraging for them, it's absolutely unacceptable for me. So to that applicant and the many others who've been let down, I want you to know we are starting to fix this right now. Because these are the people the law was intended to benefit, and they are the New Yorkers we're fighting for. The actions we're taking today fall into 3 buckets. First, we're going to unclog the licensing bottleneck and immediately review hundreds of applicants who've simply been waiting for an answer. Applicants who are required to apply with a lease, a paid-for lease, are still paying rent, hoping their license comes through. We're going to streamline the application process, assign each application a one-point person and shepherd it through the process, communicate with the applicant, and ensure that applying is as open and transparent and painless as possible. Second, we'll improve the communications with the entrepreneurs trying to gain access to this budding industry, many of whom are justice-involved individuals or veterans or MWBEs. Soon, OCM will launch a OCM cannabis map to help applicants find locations for their stores and allow the public and the state to verify that a store is legal. We're going to produce regulatory bulletins to inform the public of policy changes and hold statewide listening sessions to understand even more ways to improve. Finally, we're going to transform OCM itself. It's past time for OCM to move from a startup mode into a fully operational regulatory agency, one with stronger internal controls and a reconceived organizational structure. We're going to prioritize hiring and training new staff capable of strengthening key agency operations, fill senior roles focused on agency operations, customer service, internal controls. And as the market grows, so will the need for compliance and enforcement. So we plan to grow those teams as well. Now, those measures will significantly enhance OCM's ability to serve New Yorkers. And they're building on actions that we've already taken. We're taking the illegal cannabis shops that destabilize our neighborhoods, taking them on with a plan that padlocks doors, allows localities to pass laws of their own, and goes after the landlords who knowingly rent to illegal shops. I fought for the authority in my budget to be able to do all this, because we know the fewer illicit shops, the more room there is for licensed stores, which are overwhelmingly minority and women-owned. We want them to flourish and to grow. We're also launching a task force to go after illegal suppliers. And I'm proud to announce that the state police will take a leading coordinating role with this operation beginning on Monday. This task force will deploy teams of investigators and analysts all across the state. We'll work closely with OCM enforcement with the aim of closing as many illicit stores as possible over the next 90 days. We're not just cracking down on the bad actors, we're working to support the good ones as well. Just last month, the Cannabis Control Board approved a further 101 adult use licenses, bringing the total number of approved licenses in 2024 to over 400. And today, we've made even more progress, having approved over 122 more licenses, bringing the total for this year to 541. Let me say this. Today is not about pointing fingers. It's about pointing OCM in a new direction and implementing solutions that work for everyone, from New Yorkers eager to open their own legal shops, to growers who've waited too long for a market for their harvest, to the New Yorkers who are sick and tired of the unlicensed retailers who've taken over their neighborhoods. I'm grateful to Commissioner Moore and her dedicated team who will continue to be a trusted advisor to me as we implement the report's recommendations. And to my team in the executive chamber, they will take a larger role in this process in the interim. So together, we're taking a much needed steps, long overdue, to make cannabis program in New York successful and work as promised. It promised to deliver prosperity and opportunity that we know it can, and do so equitably, efficiently, and effectively. Thank you, and right now I'll turn it over to Commissioner Moore to add some more detail, then First Deputy Superintendent Chris West to discuss our enforcement actions before we take questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor. Earlier this year, Governor Hochul asked me to assemble a team of leaders from across the state to take a look at the opportunities to improve services at the Office of Cannabis Management. And I can't thank that group of leaders enough for their work. While the findings of this report do show that there are opportunities where there is growth in the agency that is needed, where there are ways in which we can shore up their operations, I want to note that these types of assessments are incredibly critical for us to be able to deliver on our mission as public servants, serving New Yorkers. Now, during this assessment, the task force was asked to take a look at the agency operations, and we've conducted over 50 meetings with agency staff, leadership, industry stakeholders, looking side by side at the systems that they use, the ways that you have to go through applying for a process or applying for an application, the applications themselves, and every bit of communication that has come out from the office. It's a significant amount of work. And it allowed us to have better insights into what it's going to take in order to make things work for New Yorkers and for the industry. Those areas for improvement include the need to centralize the operations and licensing, making sure that individuals have better clarity around the process and that there's a better ability for the team at OCM to be able to understand all aspects of the work and prioritize their applications from beginning until end. We know they face challenges at a staff level in customer service. They need better technology that allows them to make the phone calls that are necessary out to staff. They need the individuals who are going to help them provide the content that provides clarity to the market. And we need a step-by-step guide that allows applicants to have better transparency into what it takes in order to make sure they're successful through that process. We know they also need better data because those are challenges. Their systems are complex, their spreadsheets are many, and those trade-offs prevent them from being able to have real insights into the progress of applications. We've got to fix that. And we know relative to those technologies, we need to either use the systems that exist, leverage existing technology when needed or necessary, and try to execute on behalf of New Yorkers. Now, this task force responsibility was to find solutions that would help to improve communications and to also streamline the licensing process. Now, once OCM implements these solutions, it will not only improve transparency and open lines of communication, but it will also help to improve the equity clause in the MRTA legislation. When we enhance data, when we provide better information, when we allow people to make decisions about what they want to do with their business through the application process, around what is happening within their communities, we can all have more informed decisions. And I will say one of the great successes of this task force is the ability to point to the problems, which I think we all knew in some level that things were not working the way that they needed to. And we could see that from the staff who were frustrated they couldn't provide better solutions. Everyone wants OCM to be successful. We want it for their staff, we want it for the leadership, and we want it for the New Yorkers who want to see this industry thrive. It's important. So when we make that commitment, it requires that all of us work together. We did a very deep dive into the licensing operations, and we worked collaboratively with the team. We looked at their performance measures. We've shown them some mock-ups of what it could look like in order to improve that supervisory data, and I want to thank the group that was a part of that effort and was looking forward to something better. These solutions, which you'll see in the report, include a push towards centralizing and uplifting the operations work to unclog that licensing bottleneck, improving communications and enhancing transparency so that there's an individual that you can talk to, which is a very basic request from government, knowing that you can ask a question and that you're going to get a response. And developing a 5-year plan, which I personally think is very important, that allows to provide some sort of path forward for an agency so that you can fix a problem today and not talk about it again next year. And that is our hope, to build a foundation and move forward. By building and maintaining upon New York's commitment to equity, restructuring and streamlining this process, we can ensure that the social equity clause that is a part of New York's cannabis market will continue to be successful. This assessment team looked at the policies and procedures and the regulations, ways that they can streamline, and OCM, to its credit, and the team that works there have already started to move forward, looking for ways to make actionable those recommendations so that we can move into the next phase. With the assistance of our teams, OCM is currently bolstering its staffing levels, both those that are permanent as well as those who are temporary, to help move through this bottleneck. And we believe that these solutions are going to really dramatically improve things for the industry. We are currently recruiting for vacant licensing processing positions that will increase the size of the licensing team by 40%. I want to note that improvements do not happen overnight, but I'm confident that our turnaround plan will help to unclog the bottleneck, get answers to those applicants, and streamline the licensing process by just assigning individuals to get the work done. I want to point out that building a legal adult use cannabis industry in New York State has been a challenge for numerous injunctions. It was difficult work to get here. and I want to credit everyone who's been a part of that process. Governor Hochul remains committed to redress the harms from cannabis criminalization and to foster an equitable market that gives back to people and those in the community that were adversely impacted. When we make commitments to individuals and we ask them with a promise of a new industry that we're going to deliver on a license or we're going to deliver on an answer, we must get it done from the state's perspective. And I look forward to continuing my work, of course, at OGS, my favorite agency and the best job I've ever been in, and being a part of this administration and also helping a fellow agency to get on its feet and move forward in a positive fashion. So I want to thank you, Governor, for that opportunity, and I look forward to moving forward.
Good afternoon. I'm Chris West, First Deputy Superintendent of the New York State Police. I want to start by thanking Governor Hochul and her leadership for her trust in the men and women of this agency. The State Police will lead this enforcement effort in coordination with the Division of Criminal Justice Services, the Attorney General's Office, the Office of Cannabis Management, and the New York State Department of Tax and Finance. Our target on the criminal side will be the drug traffickers that are flooding New York State with illegal cannabis, supplying the shops that have set up all over the state, disrupting the legal market. This illegal activity is simply not fair to those who have followed the law and made substantial investments in their businesses. The unregulated sale of cannabis also poses a danger to users, as the illegal supply is not tested for substances that could cause health problems. If you buy from one of these illegal shops, you put your own health at risk. These shops are also known to sell to minors. The Office of Cannabis Management will oversee 150 investigators from several agencies to padlock as many illicit stores as possible. The State Police is uniquely positioned to lead this effort, as our members have significant experience with drug trafficking investigations. While I can't divulge to specifics and strategies, we will take full advantage of our intelligence assets and the strong relationships we have with law enforcement partners. We have a simple message to those who are responsible for illegal supply of cannabis coming into New York. We will aggressively investigate your operation, we will disrupt your illegal activities, and we will prosecute you to the fullest extent of the law. Thank you.
All right, we'll take any on-topic questions while we have First Deputy Superintendent and the Commissioner here.
Let's go to this side of that side, John. Governor, we heard a lot about OCM here. I'm curious about the dormitory authority and the loan program for the conditional licenses. There are hundreds of conditional licenses that have been approved but are not up and running yet. How much of the blame for this slow rollout lies on the dormitory authority and the loan fund that was supposed to provide the conditional licensees with funding, with assistance?
And the dormitory authority was supposed to help identify locations as well. We are transitioning from that as being the model, but when you're talking about internally within OCM, our focus has been on the question, why haven't more applications been reviewed, notified of their disposition, and started? So that is our primary focus. I don't think that DASNY was a primary driver of the inability of this agency to ensure that right now there's been over 1,000 applicants that have not been reviewed. This is part of the fall tranche. We thought they would be reviewed. And as of today, 309 applicants were rejected. They're only finding out today. So that's what we're driving our focus on right now, is why that didn't happen. That is absolutely unrelated to the dormitory authority. Any answer? Is there anything else to add on that?
So part of our assessment did not look into the DASNY activities or relative to what it takes to get open. I will say that when we look at the ways that we can move forward through this licensing process, folks need to just get answers. And there's an entire set of individuals that have put in their applications, that have identified locations, that in some of the letters that we've reviewed in communications, where they feel as though they've built out their spaces and they're ready to go. So our job is to make sure that for those individuals in that November queue, the ones who have put in their applications, that we can get them going, we can get them moving, we get those applications processed, and that is one of our top priorities.
So I'm sorry, the DASNY part of this was not part of the review?
It was not within the assessment.
Is there a particular reason for that, Governor?
Part of the reason why the assessment was not included, well, I defer a little bit, but I think one of these challenges, I apologize, Governor, our goal was to focus on the licensing process and how to unclog that bottleneck. So we were not looking at the applications within CARD in which they were working with DASNY.
If you don't get through this first step, the other part isn't relevant, John. And that's why you start by saying, why don't we have more people approved? And those who are not approved, why don't they know about it? Those who are approved, then next step is to avail themselves of loans and other resources, but they're not even getting to that. We will certainly look at all elements of this supply chain, if you will, but let's figure out why people have been waiting, spending thousands of dollars of their hard-earned money to have to pay rent in a facility that is vacant because they have not received timely notification. So that was the urgent crisis that we looked at, but certainly DASNY will be examined as well.
Governor, the farmers in this market have said for many months now, over a year now, that they're afraid for the future of the market if they don't get some sort of help soon. There's no cannabis farmers fund in the budget this year, but what's your message to the farmers who are now saying that they might have to close, and without them, there's no legal industry to speak of?
No, we have other ways that we're helping the farmers. We've been in constant communication. Our agency responsible for cannabis, for agriculture, Commissioner Ball, has been very engaged with the farmers on trying to find some lifelines for them to hold on. But the best thing we can do for the farmers for this growing season is to have a legal outlet for them. And that is why I also approach this with the urgency that's required. We realize that this November tranche was supposed to result in plentiful business for those farmers this year. It got jammed up, didn't happen, I'm saying. So now our focus is unleash those opportunities. The farmers will benefit as early as this growing season.
Yeah.
For all these applicants that spent all that hard-earned money, is there a way that the state could reimburse them for that, since technically it was the state's fault, or should the state reimburse them?
Something worth examining, but certainly there's always a risk involved when other people have to put money forward to apply for a license. They also, there's no guarantee. You know, if you're applying for a liquor license and you may have your location already and you get denied your liquor license. So there are analogies with other agencies as well.
For the commissioner, so as I understand, OGS was supposed to assist OCM with hiring staff. Can you address the failures within OGS in bringing on new staff? It really wasn't outlined in the report, so could you add to that?
Sure, I'm happy to. Look, the Office of General Services hosts multiple agencies, including the Office of Cannabis Management. We've helped other agencies to set up. We are, at the end of the day, as with any HR department, we do what is requested from an outside agency. You have to put in the request. We have to talk about prioritization. You have to let us know what you need. And so I speak from this with a little bit of my OGS hat on, because that was not the reason why I ran the assessment. But the team worked very hard to try to advance the positions that need to take place. And I want to acknowledge that when this agency launched, they launched in one of the hardest labor markets in our time. They had challenges in terms of recruitment, in terms of hiring, in terms of retention and turnover. And so also when it comes to the state process, there are processes in order to be hired. We're talking about individuals who are going through a civil service process, and that requires, from an organizational perspective, that you have individuals that understand the lead time in order to be able to hire, what it takes in order to classify positions, determining which of those positions you need to have within the agency, and it requires greater specificity. And that's the type of depth that we want to grow within the agency, to be able to have good partners that are thinking through the prioritization. I recognize that these are challenges. Just taking off my OGS hat, coming into state government or in like leading any type of agency, it can feel Byzantine. And the turnaround times to hire in the private sector versus the public are just vastly different. You have to plan. And that requires, when you're thinking about your priorities, where you have maybe a limited number of positions, that you're moving through them. I'm really proud of one of the items that we found in the task force, was that we are positions that were classified by civil service, but actually hadn't been posted. And we worked immediately to make sure that those positions were posted. We have those civil service titles out there. Not only have we immediately gotten out there through the New York Helps program, and I want to give a real big shout out to civil service, because they were able to push through the New York Helps program that allows for individuals to hire and apply very quickly recently. We were able to post the position within the last 6 weeks. We have applicants and they were sent over. So a lot of this work just requires some prioritization and teamwork. And I will say the other side of it, and this is really not to cast blame and is not my interest in making any accusations, but when you know it takes a long time in order to hire, you start thinking about other opportunities. Is there a chance through my budgeting process to be able to use a temp agency? Am I able to borrow from other agencies? What does that support look like? And one wonderful things about being within this state administration is being able to contact another agency to ask for support. And so the Department of Labor and Commissioner Reardon lent staff to OCM and have graciously agreed to increase the number of individuals that go over. For the task force that we're talking about for enforcement, 150 individuals are being lent from other agencies in order to make that work effective. So I think part of the activities that we're talking about are how do we take a step back from the confines of what I think is the instruction and start to move things forward. And so respectfully, and I think it's a great set of individuals that are there, but it really requires that we start talking with our team members, not replicate or creating your own path, but trying to look broadly from a state perspective. And I think that's the vantage point that we're trying to bring through this assessment.
It sounds like you're kind of harkening back to some of the reports finding about a lack of leadership, effective leadership within OCM, but that OGS was constantly willing to assist. Is that a accurate characterization?
I have a bias because I think my agency is fantastic. And I think I want to give grace here, which is that it is difficult when you're trying to get many things across the finish line to know which thing comes first. And so for everyone, a little bit of grace. If you are under assault in this area, you feel like this is the top thing you need to hire for. There were over 200 positions that were classified in order to be able to get this agency started. 180 were filled. So if you have to process applications, what is the first thing that you need to fill, right? So we just need to make sure that when we think about our priorities, that we're getting the basics of the work done. And I think that's what we're hoping to do, is to say, all of these things are great, but what we absolutely need to do today is make sure that if we are telling folks we're going to get your application reviewed by January, then you focus on getting the applications reviewed as soon as possible. And so I think I would love if we could take down the temperature of a lot of the noise that's out there, which is very, very hard, and just focus on the basics of these operations, which is going to give better clarity to the applicants, better clarity to the industry, and better clarity to the staff, who, to the governor's point, have been working very, very hard in order to get this work done. They believe in the industry. They left other jobs in order to be here. We need to get them the support that they need in order to be successful. And that is the priority today.
All right, Mike, next one.
Governor, are you saying that you haven't looked yet at trying to make these people, like the Latino veteran, whole from this process? If you haven't looked at it, how likely is that reimbursement?
I don't believe that the law envisioned an opportunity to reimburse people who, these are the rules that were set up, that you would have to have a facility, a space before you could apply. That was put in the law as a requirement, I believe, or was that a regulation? But that I'm saying that this is something that is a new experience, a new finding, and there's a lot of trust that these applications are being reviewed starting in November, that they would get answers. You've heard some of the challenges, and so I'm going to look at everything, because this is a new dynamic, that there's people who are out money who were relying on this. But on the other hand, there was no guarantee that you would get a yes. So
The law also didn't anticipate this kind of a mess up.
no. And that's why I'm saying it is, yeah, go ahead.
I apologize. If I may, there were a lot of different communications that were sent out around the targets, how many applications will be processed, expectations. I anticipate, I suspect that the policy team that is working on it are taking a look at all opportunities, but there's a lot of pieces to sort through in terms of the communications that might have been in a town hall or through an FAQ, and I would expect, and I apologize for interjecting, but I am sure that there are lots of different conversations that are going to just get started, and I recognize that we just recently passed this report to your team, for which I am thankful for everyone who worked very hard on it. So I'm giving the governor some grace. I'm sure that the teams are going to be looking at what is there, and ways to sort of move forward.
They should have understood that this was a risk of this great.
The communications were challenging when it came down to how many applications were going to be reviewed. And I think that to the frustrations of the applicants, there are a set of requirements that are used for, I'm getting a little wonky, if you applied within the timeframe being in October to November, November to December, the guidance that was provided around how many applications were going to be their targets to review, how many applications they planned on approving. And that's part of the confusion that's existed around how many businesses were expected to be open at this timeframe and how to balance that to many individuals' perspectives against the amount of product that is available, which is available from the farmers. So I just think, I'm just noting that there are different guidance that has been issued around the risk relative to the application. And in some areas, there were discussions about, there were guidance that said we were going to review a certain number and there is no guarantee of a license. And there are other areas in which it feels like the guidance around whether or not you needed to have a lease or rent was unclear. And I think it'll take some time to work through that. And I know that the team is evaluating it.
Dave, how likely is reimbursement for these people?
I'm sorry?
How likely is the reimbursement for these people?
That is not something that I can answer, but I apologize for.
Let me say this.
interjecting.
In the interest of being transparent and disclosing to the public and the media information upon our receipt with very limited time for review, we need time to evaluate, who's been harmed. Did they rely on information that said you would be approved and was not? I mean, there's a lot of data. I guarantee it's going to be case by case, because if it's established that it's clear that you have to do this, but there's no guarantee of being selected, or as she's saying, there's a lot of vagaries that my interest was, come forward to say, we are going to find the answers. We're going to put this on the right path. We're going to, make sure that these mistakes are not ever to occur again in the future. So I'm forward looking right now, but that does not mean that we won't examine every element of what has surfaced as a result of that and see if we can make things right.
Governor, a lot of the issues that you and Commissioner Boyd highlighted today have been identified either in the media or by stakeholders for a couple of years now. So what was it about this spring that prompted the review?
Well, we have been internally trying to improve communications, and that's been a source of frustration for my team. As we heard from people anecdotally, even out in the community, people saying, I have not heard anything. So again, it was this November tranche. Expectations were in January, people would start to hear. And when we found out that there were meetings called that would have only a minuscule number of approvals, that's when I called out months ago saying, this is not right now. The earlier genesis of the time involved really had to do with a lot of the staffing issues, as was mentioned. There was litigation for 9 months that stopped the process. So there were other variables that conspired against success early on, but it was this most recent fall to spring class of applications that I found a lot of inaccuracies and inefficiencies, and I wanted to send in someone who was had an eye toward organizational management, who understood the capabilities of government and found out where we're missing. Why couldn't technology that is employed in other agencies be employed here to save the time of literally starting over? So that's just one example of areas where efficiencies could have been had. They were not, and now we're going to fix them. Right?
All right, we're going to